I woke up at 5:12 in the morning to a sound that didn't belong on my land, not at that hour, not in a place that had been quiet longer than most people had been alive. For a split second, my brain tried to lie to me, tried to call it thunder, because that's what your mind does when it wants just a few more seconds of peace before reality kicks the door in. But this sound didn't roll across the sky or fade into the distance. It growled. Low, mechanical, steady. The kind of noise that tells you something heavy is moving with intention, and it's not asking permission. I stepped onto my porch in my boots. Coffee still warm in my hand, and the smell hit me before the sight ever did. Diesel and raw earth, sharp enough to weight every nerve in your body. Headlights cut through the red Oklahoma dust, bright and unapologetic, and there it was. A bulldozer, blade down, chewing into my soil like it had a personal vendetta. Dirt flew in heavy clumps, landing where grass had been just hours earlier. Engines idled like they owned the morning. And right then, standing there watching the ground split open, I knew this wasn't a mistake. This wasn't poor planning or a crew at the wrong address. This was deliberate. Someone was digging a trench around my house, not near it, not alongside it, around it. A wide, ugly ring of torn earth, like they were drawing a line in the dirt and daring me to step across it, daring me to see how trapped a man could really be without bars or chains. I remember thinking how quiet it felt inside my chest. That strange calm you get right before anger sets in. The kind of calm that tells you something important just broke. Off to the side stood a woman I already knew too well. Different name here. Let's call her Lydia Barnes, president of the HOA next door. She wore a neon safety vest over a designer blouse, clipboard tucked under her arm like it gave her authority over gravity itself. Hair perfect. Nails perfect, shoes that had never known real dirt. She looked at me across the torn-up ground and smiled. Not a neighborly smile, not even a fake polite one. It was the kind of smile people wear when they believe the ending has already been written, and they're just waiting for the credits to roll. She thought she had me cornered. She thought isolation would do the job. What she didn't know was that my land had been paying attention for a very long time. But none of this started with bulldozers or trenches or power plays. It started decades earlier, behind an old barn with peeling red paint, with my father handing me a wrench that felt too heavy for my 12-year-old hand. He didn't lecture. He didn't raise his voice. He just looked at me, wiped his hands on a rag, and said, "If you don't understand the things you rely on, someone else will control them for you." Back then, I thought he was talking about engines, fences, generators. Years later, I realized he was talking about people, systems, and the quiet ways power creeps in while you're busy living your life. I grew up on that land, 12 acres outside a small Oklahoma town. Most folks only pass through on their way somewhere else. Cottonwoods leaning toward the creek like they were listening. Cicadas so loud in the summer you felt them in your chest. Winters where the wind cut through your jacket and reminded you to keep moving or freeze. Fences that needed mending every spring, because wind and time don't care how hard you worked last year. A house that wasn't fancy, but it didn't quit either. When my dad passed, the land came to me, and I stayed. Not because I couldn't leave, but because I didn't want to. I rebuilt the porch after a tornado peeled half of it away. I remember hammering boards back into place while the sky was still bruised purple, thinking how strange it was that destruction always left things quieter afterward. I dug the well deeper when the water started tasting off. Hands blistered, back screaming, because water is something you don't appreciate until it threatens to leave. I installed solar panels so nobody could ever shut me down with a switch, a bill, or a grudge. I wanted to be left alone, and I built my life to make that possible. Life out there had a rhythm. Quiet mornings where the only sound was wind moving through tall grass. Long evenings where the sky went orange, then purple, then black, slow and patient, like it wasn't in a hurry to be anywhere else. Time measured by seasons instead of meetings. My closest neighbor was an old rancher named Earl, who waved every few days and never asked questions. Sometimes we'd talk over the fence about weather or cattle prices. Nothing important, nothing invasive. We both understood the rule: you respect boundaries and you get respected back. I honestly thought that kind of peace was permanent. Then progress showed up in a white pickup with glossy brochures and fake smiles. They called it Pine Hollow Commons, talked about shared values and modern community living. What they meant was identical houses lined up like teeth, identical rules printed in thick binders, and an HOA that believed order mattered more than people. They talked about safety, property value, uniformity. Like those things were sacred. They built their fence right up against mine, straight and tall, like a challenge, and I figured that was the end of it. Let them play king on their side. I'd stay free on mine. The first letter came quietly. An offer to buy my land. No return address. No name. Just a number and a deadline, like my life could be scheduled. I burned it without opening a window. The second letter came with a bigger number, highlighted in yellow like it was supposed to impress me. I burned that one too. That's when the tone changed. Suddenly, I wasn't just a neighbor. I was a problem. Drones started hovering low over my fields, low enough I could hear the buzz and see the lenses adjust when I moved. Sometimes they'd hover right over my barn, as if counting boards or measuring shadows. A white sedan parked near my boundary for hours at a time. Engine off. Windows dark, like it was holding its breath. Surveyors accidentally stepping onto my side of the fence, acting confused when I pointed it out, apologizing without ever sounding sorry. One young guy with nervous eyes glanced back at me once and said, almost like he was confessing something, "You should keep an eye on this place, sir." Then he walked away fast, like he had already said too much. That stuck with me. Then Lydia showed up in person, heels clicking on gravel like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence she thought she controlled. She talked about growth in the future while standing on land she didn't own. She said words like opportunity, alignment, and community responsibility, like they were spells she could cast if she said them enough times. When I told her no, plain and simple, she smiled and said, "Sometimes people resist change until it becomes unavoidable." That was the moment I realized this wasn't about land value. This was about control, about breaking resistance, about proving that no one gets to say no to her and walk away clean. She didn't see land, she saw defiance. What Lydia didn't know was that years earlier, after a few break-ins nearby, I'd installed hidden cameras, not the obvious kind under the eaves, the quiet kind. Fence posts, tree lines, the old birdhouse by the creek that no one ever paid attention to. Not to spy on neighbors, but so no one could ever lie about what happened on my land. And they gave me everything. The surveys turned aggressive. Stakes appeared deeper and deeper inside my property, sometimes overnight, like someone daring me to notice. Bright floodlights from new houses aimed straight at my fields at night, not lighting their yards, but mine. It felt less like illumination and more like interrogation. Sleep got harder. Silence disappeared. Even the animals stayed farther back, like they could feel something wasn't right. Then came the trench. They called it drainage work. The deputy who showed up once barely glanced at it and called it a civil matter. Lydia called it a necessary inconvenience. I called it what it was: intimidation. By noon that first day, my driveway was blocked by a dump truck with a fake notice zip-tied to the grill. Delivery stopped. Trash pickup turned around. Even the mail carrier hesitated like he didn't want to be involved. My water came out cloudy, carrying the smell of disturbed sediment and diesel. Someone had been touching things they had no right to touch, and they were counting on me to panic or give up. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I sat in the dark with the glow of monitors lighting the room, watching camera feeds rewind and replay. Every click of a shovel, every boot step, every quiet laugh. I watched them move like they already owned the place, like I was just a temporary inconvenience, standing between them and a clean map. That's when I saw it. Just after 2:40 a.m., Lydia stood near the trench, pointing toward my foundation, telling workers to reinforce a section near the well line. Her voice came through clear as day, calm, casual, like she was ordering coffee at a drive-thru. "If it cracks or something happens to him, insurance will handle it." That one sentence changed everything. That's not zoning. That's not a dispute. That's intent. The next night, they came back. Different workers. Same confidence. Laughing a little too loud for that hour. Like they already believed they'd won. I stepped outside. Not yelling, not threatening, just standing there with my phone recording and my dog pressed against my leg, growling low. Lydia tried to posture, tried to warn me about consequences, about trespassing laws she didn't understand, about power she thought she owned. But when I told her the sheriff was going to hear her own voice explaining exactly how expendable I was, her smile finally broke. For the first time, she looked unsure. For the first time, she realized I wasn't alone, and I wasn't bluffing. The next morning, I called the sheriff's office and asked for one man by name. Older guy. Gray beard. Been around long enough to know when something crossed a line. I laid everything out. Every angle. Every timestamp. I didn't argue. I didn't exaggerate. I just let the footage speak. He watched in silence, didn't interrupt, didn't roll his eyes. When it ended, he leaned back, exhaled slowly, and said, "This isn't civil." By noon, deputies walked into the HOA office. Lydia walked out in cuffs, still trying to look composed, still pretending this was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't. Charges stacked up fast. Trespass. Fraud. Unlawful imprisonment. Interference with utilities. Conspiracy. Turns out I wasn't the first property she'd targeted, just the first one who documented everything instead of backing down. The trench got filled by the county, not the HOA. Real permits, real crews. Neighbors came by afterward. Some apologized. Some looked ashamed. Some avoided eye contact entirely. A few quietly thanked me, like I'd done something they wished they'd had the courage to do themselves. The land finally felt like it could breathe again. Like it had been holding its breath, right along with me. I put up a new fence on the west side, taller this time, anchored deep, bolted a small metal sign to it. Nothing flashy, nothing threatening. Just a reminder that some boundaries don't move just because someone powerful wants them to. Here's what still sits with me though. Lydia never thought she was the villain. In her mind, she was progress. She was order. Anyone who resisted was a problem to be solved. And that scares me more than the trench ever did, because people like that don't see damage, they see obstacles. They don't hear no, they hear a challenge. So let me ask you something. If you were standing on that porch at 5:12 in the morning, watching someone draw a line around your life, would you have sold early and walked away? Or stood your ground and risked everything? Where do you draw the line between community and control? And how much power should people like that really have over people who just want to be left alone? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one, and if you've ever dealt with an HOA that thought it owned more than it did, you already know why this story matters.